it alone. They're your films. Films. Sequels suck. Sequels suck. Sequels suck.
Welcome back, movie fans. This is a podcast, Sequels Suck, and we have an interesting sequel for you in that, is it really a sequel? Is it a sequel to the books? Is it a sequel to the original? There's a lot of debate about it, but at the end of the day, it is called Return to Oz, giving the implication that they've been there before in a movie. And with me, as always, is the ever-reliable Angus. How are you, mate?
I'm great. Ever reliable. Fantastic. Is that a swipe at the fact that off air I made you guys wait for half an hour?
It actually wasn't, but it actually wasn't.
It is now.
But it is now, yes.
Excellent.
And the person that took us back to Oz to watch this movie, Michelle.
I didn't make you watch it.
It was your request. This is your platform. This is one of your requests. So.
I don't know. We can get the group chat up, and we have the receipts. There was some stern implication that we had to watch this and do this episode.
Third time's the charm.
Correct.
Third time's the charm. This has been a somewhat cursed episode, but we're here. We're doing it.
Yes.
We're returning to Oz.
We have clicked our heels.
Which I think, as part of the opener, growing up, and obviously, Angus, you were alive at the time this movie came out, very young. Obviously,
I was a whole, I think, 8 months old when this movie came out.
Okay, so and maybe I might have been close to going to kinder, but I was alive. Michelle, obviously, you weren't alive, but I remember this movie being ready to come out, and most kids of any age, especially in our generation, grew up with the original Wizard of Oz musical, and it's so part of the pop culture that when this movie was coming out, the assumption was, when you hear Return to Oz, they've made a sequel, it's an updated one. And obviously at this time, this was the longest break between a first movie and a second movie.
Yeah.
Which has since been broken, but it is.
By which movie? Do you remember which movie? We talked about this in our Top Gun Maverick episode.
Bambi.
Bambi 2. Bambi 2 is the
sequel
we had to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Coming soon.
It's soon is a strange word,
but it is definitely a movie that's interesting in that it's kind of a sequel, but not like Disney have made it. Obviously, the original was MGM, and so this is like a sequel, like it's the continuation of Dorothy's story, but it's not in that. They didn't go down the musical path. They don't really necessarily totally connect the movies. It's obviously a different, Disney making it. It's a little bit darker. But when it comes to the actual books, it sort of is a sequel, but it is. I think there's a confusing part of it that really it was never meant to be a sequel to obviously the original movie that we all grew up and love. And
I don't know about that. I don't think it's meant to be I don't think they were trying to trick anyone into thinking that it's a direct, like, hey, it's the same director and the same production company, and it's going to be a all singing, all dancing Munchkin musical again in glorious Technicolor. But they do, like, this movie opens with the events of the first one having a pretty serious impact on young Dorothy Gale. And then when she does get back to Oz, the stuff that's going on there is all referencing the first movie. I think it is one of those weird ones because in 1985, the idea of like rebooting a franchise was non-existent. The idea of giving a sequel was almost non-existent. It was a rare bird. But like rebooting something was unthinkable. You didn't do that. Why would you do that? Why would you take an existing property that made you money and then try and like start it over again? Especially when there was so many fewer films being made. Like people had less opportunity to get bored. We didn't have streaming. I mean, this was a big VHS film when I was a kid. Like this was the cover, the artwork. And if anyone wants to see, you can check it out on IMDb. It's the poster they've got up as the artwork. It's great. And it's like for a kid, you've got like a pumpkin head dude, a robot, a scarecrow dude, a lion, a flying couch, a castle in the background, lots of sparkle. Like as a kid, and it's all painted. It's hand painted.
You just called the robot, which is now clearly one of the biggest apps on social media.
Yeah, well, that's why I called him a robot.
Poor TikTok just a robot.
That's why I called him a robot, because once we start calling him TikTok, everyone is going to be so confused about what the fuck we're talking about in this movie. But this is Tick with a CK.
This is why this episode is going to be called episode 26, The Return to Oz, #TikTok.
TikTok. But yeah, like this is a big VHS one. This is one that I remember watching, and probably honestly, like as a kid, I reckon I watched this one more than Wizard of Oz, because Wizard of Oz is like it's a slot, like it's a commitment.
It's
That's a
long.
big, long movie. And if you're going to sit down and watch it, that's kind of your afternoon
Mhm.
gone. Whereas this one, you're in and you're out in something like, what is it, like
Hour and a
Oh,
half.
it's no, it's an hour and 53. So it's almost 2 hours, which for a kid is a fucking eternity, which is probably why when I tried to show my kids this movie this time, they both walked out. But it feels like less of a commitment. I think because it's constantly moving, like every
Yeah.
10 minutes. It's like a totally different world that you're in.
I want to know how Michelle found this movie again. And this is no disrespect that she's the young one on the podcast, but I always find it interesting how some kids will find a movie that wasn't sort of brought out in their childhood necessarily, and is especially this movie where it's got a cult following, like you said, the VHS. But I reckon there was that moment in time, maybe once it hit video, that 86, 87, 88, kids in my era were watching it. It was a known film. But then that sometimes just fades away. So for Michelle to be able to pick it up and really enjoy it, that's really cool. But can you remember how you were introduced to it?
No.
Oh, wow.
It would have been on VHS, but I can't remember back that far. I was born in 88, but I
Yeah,
know.
which means it was like 3 years ago
Yeah.
that you watched this for the first time. So what do you mean you can't remember back that far? Also, it's worth noting Michelle has seen like 7 films in her whole life. So how do you not remember the first time you saw this one? Listeners of the podcast will know every time we do an episode, she's like, this is the first time I've seen this. I've never heard of it before.
Well, this one I've seen more than once. Thank you.
Did you own it? Did you have a copy of it?
I don't think we owned it. It would have been like a Video Easy rental. Rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't remember the first time I saw it. I tried to ask my mum, like, do you remember the first time we saw it? And she was no help.
Is it because after you saw it, you were so traumatized they had to take you to a shady-looking children's hospital and give you electroshock therapy on your brain and you no longer remember what happened?
Yes, that's exactly
Excellent.
right.
Yeah. That's probably a good jumping off point. This movie starts out in a fucked up way. I have been answering the same question from my 8-year-old for the past 3 weeks now, which is why were they trying to electrocute that little girl? And I don't know how to answer it because there's not a good reason other than well, in 1939, I think it was, a group of filmmakers and writers and actors got together to make one of the most beloved films of all time. And in 1985, a bunch of guys did some coke and decided to make a sequel. Yeah. I don't know how to answer what the fuck they're doing at the start of this movie. I had forgotten that they tried to electrocute it. Did you guys, how long has it been since I'm sure you watched it a lot more recently than we did. Michelle, when was the last time you watched this before we decided we were going to do it as an app?
Probably like a couple of years ago, I'd say.
So you remembered the horror of the opening. What about you, Cable? Had you checked this out since you're an adult? I don't think I've seen it since like primary school.
Yeah, so I would have watched it a couple of years ago, maybe 18 months ago, and then watched it again recently for the podcast.
So you guys were prepared. I was prepared for the opening of this movie.
Sorry, we should have warned you.
I also,
to be
I
totally
made my
honest,
whole family watch it, and no one had seen it, including my wife, who loves the first one. She was like, "What is this? What is happening?"
So,
and then half hour in, she realized it wasn't a musical, and she left.
Yeah. So the whole tying her down to the bed or strapping her down, that sort of, I think, vaguely might have slipped my mind a little bit, but I knew there was a whole issue with her, at least psychologically, that she would be at the doctor's and there was some sort of, but that a lot of that
I remember
stuff
the doctor, but I thought she like went to the doctor, and then while she was there, a storm came and she woke up the doors.
Do you know, it's funny because I hadn't watched it for so long. I do remember, obviously, there's issues with M, and that don't really believe her and realize there's some issues. They take her into town. I remember the doctor, but I remember that obviously the other nurse. It makes me think of Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and that she was one of the villains back in Oz. So I remembered all that, but it was, the whole strapping her down and him talking about this is the machine, blah, blah, blah. I really sort of had maybe forgotten that a little bit because I do remember her waking up, obviously, in the crate, Belinda the chicken.
I forgot about chicken too.
What
was that?
Her name's Belina.
Oh, Belinda.
The whole movie, I kept waiting for that chicken to just like get eaten or fuck off. And then, spoilers, that chicken's really important to the end of the movie. But I was like, why is there fucking talking chicken just following her around?
It's the new Toto.
But do you reckon I was actually surprised how good the chicken was? Not storyline wise, not plot wise, but for 85 and the animatics and stuff. And I'm like, oh my god, there's maybe one or two shots you go, I know that's a fake chicken, but there's other times you go, that's so believable for 85.
That's a good chicken.
Yeah, those are really good chicken effects. It's I don't even know really where to begin pulling this film apart or diving into it or what to do with it. Everything is new from the original. That's probably like it's a new, not just like obviously new director, new actors, but new production studio. It's now a Disney film. It's not an MGM film. New character design for any of the returning characters, save for even Dorothy. Kind of, she's got the pigtails, but really everything else about her is different. Scarecrow is unrecognizably different. The lion is actually a lion now. Yeah, everything is totally redone from the original. And from what I could look up and find about why they chose to like change the design of Scarecrow and Lion and Tin Man for the brief times you see them, it was just like no one really thought about it until the last minute, and then they didn't have the time or the budget to like source the original outfits or cast an actor whose face could be seen, and they just kind of like, oh yeah, do this. Even Scarecrow, like he was meant to have all these different masks so he could have all these different facial expressions, because obviously it's just painted on a sack now. And they're like, oh, we didn't even have like the time to properly do that, which is why he's got like 5 expressions in this movie. How does a movie like this happen? How do you guys think this comes about as the official sequel to one of the great?
I guess that's coming back to that core problem is it really a sequel? Because I feel like some of the YouTube I actually went a bit down the rabbit hole with this movie too, with some YouTube videos and stuff like that, and the whole argument whether it actually is a sequel. And the problem is they called it Return to Oz, so already us as an audience unfortunately triggered that we've been to Oz before, so when we're returning to Oz in the movie, it's expected to be the sequel. Yet Walter Murch and Disney, their perception was, well, we're going to sort of piggyback off the original a little bit, but it's really a standalone film that's going to be a continuation of the stories that were in book form, and it follows the second or third book or whatever. So we're not necessarily going to be a sequel. It's like a still standalone movie. But the reality is people are still going to compare it, and yet they went and got the ruby slippers. They paid for rights to have ruby slippers from MGM. So it's kind of like, well, it's weird. It's kind of like you're saying you don't want to be the sequel. You're not officially a sequel. You're just and the next part of the story that you're going to show, but then you're kind of still making that connective tissue with having the ruby slippers and, like I said, a few other bits and pieces that make it feel like it's a continuation of that same story.
Yeah, so according to Walter Murch, this film was always meant to be inspired by the books more. So it's credited officially as being based on 2 books, Ozma of Oz and The Land of Oz, and they mashed those 2 together. So and they put that in the credits. He was on Front Street about it. Legend has it that Disney didn't quite realize that when they brought him on board to do it, and so there was a lot of like, so like, where's the Munchkins? When are they going to sing? And he was like, not going to happen in this one. How about some fucked up dudes with rollerblade hands? What do you think about that? Hey, that'll be fun for the kids. How about we electrocute this child? Hey, this is fun.
Traumatized for life.
Yep. I just want to do a quick screen share with you guys, because I just noticed something about the poster that I was speaking about before, and I want people who are watching this to see it as well, because I find it fucking hilarious. Able participant screen sharing, Michelle.
I was going to say we can.
So here's the poster that I was talking about before. So you see, you got the pumpkin head, you got Tin Man in there. He's not in there very much. But just have a look at Dorothy's face.
Yeah,
this would have been painted well and truly after they cast Fairuza Balk. That's not Fairuza Balk. What the hell is going on there? How have they decided that that's the way to go? Because that's Fairuza Balk. There she is. Look at that. Yeah. Look at that unmistakable mouth. Do you think part of the reason that they didn't put Fairuza Balk on there is because they didn't want to scare the kids even more? Like, that's they haven't quite made her Judy Garland, but they've been like, we're just gonna garland her up a little bit. No one knows what a kid looks like anyway. Also, that kid looks fucking terrified in that picture. Just bug-eyed, like, oh Jesus.
Wouldn't you be terrified?
It's funny you bring that up, because I think that's the other thing about like continuing the story again. If people are trying to say it's a sequel, Judy Garland, I should say, she wasn't super old, but she wasn't super young either when she played that same role, and yet Fairuza Balk was definitely more of that sort of age that you think Dorothy might be, and it was as a kid.
Her first film, I think.
Yeah.
So there's definitely an age sort of difference, like markedly, in both those 2 actresses, which is interesting.
You know what I would have loved to have have seen.
Mm.
I would have loved to have seen a sequel that did use Judy Garland at the age she was when they made this one, but also in the condition she was when they made this one, because she wasn't traveling the best then. And I want to see, like, that would have been a better look into what actually happened to Dorothy Gale when she got back from Oz and got back and was like, there was people there and their little man dancing around. You should have seen them there. And everyone's like, yeah, okay. All right, Dorothy. And then it just cuts to like 40 years later. And she's just sitting on a porch somewhere with the skeleton of Toto next to her, just necking a bottle. Everyone's like, there's crazy Dorothy Gale. And then she finally gets taken back to Oz. But when she gets back, she's like, why'd you leave me so long? And then she just goes around murdering everyone for ruining her life. It's like, everyone thinks I'm crazy. And she becomes the Wicked Witch. That's the sequel I wish they had have done.
I'd watch it. I would see it.
Yeah, it'd be so good.
So we didn't really, I don't think did we finish off on the opening scene about the psychology of the electric shock treatment? Like, yeah, it is. It's totally messed up. But then the crazy thing is, I think about in that time frame, that would have been the stuff that would have been happening.
Yeah, it happened.
100%. So I was like, that's totally, actually, to me, that fits. It's just, is it appropriate in a kids' movie? So having said that, there's a lot of kids. No, well, but this is the crazy thing too. Like, there's a lot of those kids' movies when you look back, there's always that one or two things that's a bit weird and that's a bit full on. Like, the Never Ending Story's got stuff like that in it. And then
this did bring Never Ending Story to mind a lot for me. I think this, like, the thing everyone talks about is the Wheelers, like being the thing that fucked them up as a kid because they're these creepy. Like, when I watched them this time, I was like, and my kids, like my eldest got to the point of the Wheelers before she bailed on the movie, but she saw that and she was like, who are these guys? And then they laughed and one of them fell over. She's like, these guys are idiots. Yeah. I was like, oh, Dad had to have sleepless nights over these guys as a kid. But I watched it and I was like, there's nothing, like, Never Ending Story. Yeah. The scenes that are fucked up in that are fucked up now as an adult. You watch them like, oh my God, this is too much. But but the friggin' electrocuting a kid on the brain, like, I don't know how that didn't mess me up as a child. I must have been not empathetic at all and be like, get what you get, bitch. I don't know how that didn't stick with me and ruin me as a child.
But did you get, like, what the crazy thing about it is they don't believe anything Dorothy says. So she's got an imaginary world that she lives in.
And why would you, by the way? Like, she's not set up to win with that story.
No, not at all. But yeah, she's got these dreams or whatever you call it, imaginations where, you know, this is a time when kids should be allowed to have an imagination, and that's healthy to have that. But obviously back in those days, they thought it was troubling. It was a bit too out there. She really believed she met the Lion, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Wicked Witch of the West and all that sort of stuff. The crazy thing is, so they don't believe her as adults, which I can understand, but this is also about the adults kind of, you know, trying to almost stifle that imagination and that creativity in a child.
Yeah.
Yet one of the other great ironies of that scene is he's like pretty much saying everything you're talking about is all make-believe. You need to get in the real world kind of thing. We're going to strap you up and we're going to electrocute you. But in order to make you feel at peace, I'm going to be creative and talk shit about how good this machine is. And it's got an eye, it's got a nose, it's got a face, and it's got a tongue. And you go, hang on a second, that is so hypocritical that you have to dummy up this machine to look like a friendly robot, yet you can't deal with Dorothy talking about the friendly Tin Man and the cowardly lion. And you know what I mean? It's kind of messed up how adults are in this movie as well.
I mean, I think the lesson we learned is that doctors who electrocute children are probably not good doctors. That's across the board. Did this not scare you at all as a kid, Michelle? Like, was there no part of this that you were like, nah?
I don't think so.
All right, then what about this film captivated you? What caught your imagination?
I want to know why. Let's say I know you've said online or with us, you know, outside this podcast that you obviously like this movie a lot and you've watched it as a kid growing up quite a bit. I mean, is it, you know, obviously there's something that draws you to this movie.
Well, I think because I love The Wizard of Oz, and you think like this is the continuation and going back to Oz. I've seen this movie, like you said, probably more than The Wizard of Oz. Like, it's got that rewatchability factor. I just grew up with it, and so it's like one of those nostalgic kind of movies for me, I guess.
Well, that's an interesting flip for us on this show because
I've seen it more than once.
Well, 99% of the films that we talk about on this, Cable and I are like, oh my God, when I was like 9 years old, this is you're like, I watched it for this episode. I've never seen it before, and you don't get it. And Cable and I have seen it, but we don't have that nostalgic link to it at all. And I think I understand you a little bit better because I don't know why anyone would watch this movie multiple times. I don't know why you'd keep coming back to it. It's not just weird. Like there's extensive parts of it. You're like, this makes no goddamn sense. Like I reckon I was probably 3/4 of the way into the film, and I was really paying attention because I was like, all right, I want to make sure I like take everything in because we're going to be talking about it. And at 3/4 of the way, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what this movie's about. I don't know what's happening. I don't know where we are or why we're there. They keep talking about the friggin' Nome King. And then like they never really cover that until the very end. And then like, here he is. And then he's really important. And then I think like by the time they got to the room where like they go into the room and she's got to guess, like I rewound and watched that section. Like when he's explained to her, she's got to go in there. I rewound and watched it like 3 times. I'm like, I still don't understand how we got to this point. I still don't understand how we got to the point. Can you explain to me, Michelle, why when Dorothy gets into this fucking cave, that's a living cave. Also, sidebar, why is he called the Nome King? He's a fucking rock monster, but never mind.
True.
Explain to me why when she gets there, she has to go into the room and find the friends that are turned into objects. And also, if he can make a room that nice, why doesn't he make the rest of the fucking cave that nice? Questions about question, but explain to me, just clear that bit up. Why does she go? I literally have no idea why she goes in the room and why that's a thing.
Well, because he turned her friends into ornaments and she's got to find them to get them back.
Yeah. Why doesn't he just turn her? Like, why does he even give her this opportunity? Why doesn't he just eat her or cause a cave in? Or
Kind of weird, and he's just like playing games.
Oh, kind of weird.
To mess with her.
But isn't he
just messing with her?
But isn't there any explanation about why the fuck this is happening? Because it's just kind of like she gets there and she's like, you did something bad to King Scarecrow, and he's like, I'm the Gnome King, and she's like, and he's like, go into this room, your friends are now tables, and she's like, okay. Like I feel like there's a scene that they cut out that actually explain, because that's the moment in the movie when you're supposed to be like, oh, that's what this movie. No, there's no moment.
You know, I've always taken it as that it's kind of like for him to get more power, almost to become more human, he needs more and more people to become ornaments or like trick them into going into that room. It's almost like getting their souls. He sort of builds on
Is that it?
I just thought he was like playing games.
But also, you're right, Kev, but that is never explained. Why does he become more human or more like solid? Why does he go from being
because you know,
claymation to a person?
As more and more people more and more of the characters go in that don't get it right, and clearly there's more ornaments in there, and that's all those people of Oz. He's getting stronger and stronger, and almost like more human form. And that was the trick. That's why he plays the game. Is this lure into? It's almost like the devil trying to say, "Oh, I'll give you all this stuff. You just got to sign this thing away." And you go, "Oh yeah, I'll do that." You're not knowing, "Oh no, I'm giving up my soul for eternity." That's I just think that is. But you're right. The Gnome King's an interesting name because he's more like he's a mountain and a rock.
Also, it's spelled Nome. It's not. There's no G. He's not a gnome like a garden gnome. It's just like a made up.
Well, I was going to say, but a garden gnome's kind of rock anyway.
But that's spelled with a G. This is a no. Yeah. It's a word that's a made up word that sounds like another existing word, which is just. But all right. So if he needs to turn people into objects to become more human, why is his servant, the chick with multiple heads? Yeah. Why is she out there turning people into rocks for him? Because then he can't turn them into objects and become more human. So he's like number one henchman is just fucking him left, right, and center. And he's like, good job.
I think this is one of those movies you watch as a kid where you don't think about it this much. Then you grow up and you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, you watched as an adult and you've also watched as a child. Like when you're a kid, when you get to the culmination of this film, were you there being like, yeah. That's what happens when the Gnome King comes along. You got to turn shit into object, or were you just like la 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 la? It's chicken. Like,
but do you think it could also be, and again, not having read those books for a long time, could it be that they've gone to the source material and the books don't really explain a lot of this stuff, and they've mashed too much of the stuff into one movie, where it does get to a point where there's not enough exposition to explain why these things are happening, and there's, you know, like you said, they needed an extra scene in there to fully explain it. Like even having kind of the two villains, and then she's kind of the servant, but then the wheelers are her servant. I was like, there's too much.
So what you're saying is, in order to fully understand this film, you need to go and read all of the 37 odd books that Frank L. Baum wrote.
No, but
then be like,
no, but what I'm saying saying is, even back then, you think about anything like Enid Blyton that wrote a lot of stuff back then that I grew up with, that you go, oh, that was a great, fantastical story as a kid, but then you put that onto the screen, it might not necessarily translate. So I'm saying the source material might be good, but not well thought out. And then these guys have gone, oh, let's go get these books that are 50, 60 years old, and we've got some good ideas. Oh, we'll get TikTok, that's a great idea. Ozma, yep, that's a great idea. And they put it all together, and it's like it doesn't really work together because not enough is explained, or like you said, not enough of it makes sense, or we don't understand their motivations for being the villains they are.
But that's bad screenwriting. Like,
But
if you take a book,
no, I agree. No,
if you
I agree
read
with
the
that
book
too.
and you're like, oh, this book's crazy, I'm going to adapt it to a film, but I'm not going to do any extra work. I'm just going to be like, hey, this is the book. So if it doesn't
You'll
make sense,
understand.
you should read the book, because it didn't
Yeah.
make sense in the book either. So it's not a me problem.
No, I agree with that too. Like it's on the screenwriters to make it make sense. I agree with that too, but maybe that it was just almost like, I don't know, I wasn't there, but it just, I can sort of see sometimes with source material, they don't want to change stuff too much and keep as best to the source material as possible. But inherently there could be a problem if that source material doesn't, give too much information, or they try and do what they did with Spider-Man 3. They put too many things in the one movie and fucked it.
Look,
It's still a great movie.
if you, all right, so sidebar, you love Spider-Man 3?
Oh no, not Spider-Man 3. I meant Return of the Oz. I haven't. You know, I haven't seen Spider-Man 3.
I did know that, because I mean that movie has been out a while. So speaking of the books, Frank L. Baum changed the spelling of gnome from gnome to gnome. So he took the G out.
Yeah.
He did that on purpose because he felt the phonetic spelling was easier for children to learn. So he deliberately misspelt words to fuck with children. Cheers, champ. In universe,
Yeah, but isn't he? No, but that's actually quite smart. But anyway,
that's quite smart to misspell words so kids can learn them that way. And when they grow up and start writing, it's like, you can't write for shit. And they're like,
can you remember George Lucas created a character called Jar Jar Binks that purposely spoke baby talk in a movie?
George Lucas purposely created a character called Jar Jar Binks that culturally appropriated a lot of different cultures, speech patterns. But he was making children be bad spellers. But also, gnome means one who knows in his universe, because gnomes obsessively catalog the location of every mining site in the known world. That the Nome King does. That's got nothing to do with the Nome King. He's the king of the gnomes, and he doesn't do any of that shit. How did he become king of the gnomes if he doesn't do any of that shit?
And there aren't any gnomes, are there? Where are all the gnomes?
Hey, maybe that's why he's king of the gnomes, because he's the only one. It's like me saying I'm king of this desk. No, la, la,
You
la.
are.
I'm King Angus of the desk. La 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 la.
And he looks like the rock. Is it the rock eater from?
Somewhat, yeah, a little bit. It feels like it's kind of ripped
definitely
on that idea, but it's also like Michelle saying she's queen of this podcast too. So.
She is. I will make shirts.
There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that was going on in this movie that perhaps lends a little bit of information as to why we got what we got with the end product.
Was there drugs involved?
6 months into pre-production, so not even when they started filming, a guy called Paul Maslansky was hired to replace Gary Kurtz as the producer of the film, because Disney was already worried the film was going over budget. This is pre-production, mind you. They haven't even rolled camera yet. Maslansky cut the budget down from 20 million to 16 million. So that could explain why we lost like some facial expressions from Scarecrow, or why like some of the characters are like, just put a fucking tin guy out there. Don't actually get an actor. Just get a statue. We don't have any money.
But you know what's interesting about that, and I feel like that's probably, I don't know where they would have necessarily put the Lion and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man in before what they already had with TikTok and Pumpkinhead.
No, I'm not saying put them in the story. I'm just saying don't turn the Lion into an actual lion.
Oh no, I get that, but what I'm saying is originally I think they still wanted to have those three characters from that first movie have a bigger role in this, and then I wonder if the budget really forced that back to maybe go, oh, we'll just focus on TikTok and Jack Pumpkinhead and the Flying Moose. Going on what you're saying about the designs earlier, I know I'm jumping back, and I want to hear Michelle's opinion on this as well, but I kind of like the look of the characters from the original movie that were men in suits to a Tin Man that actually looks like a legitimate Tin Man. The Scarecrow, I think actually looks really good. Apart from, yeah, you're right. It would be great if he had a few more facial expressions. And I really like the line. I'm like, to me, that felt more realistic than three guys in suits in 1930.
That is fair. This film was shooting for realism, so it's good that they landed.
Well, well, when you think about realism, just think about, the scary part of the movie for a lot of kids was the wheelers. But how do they can come up and roll at you really quick, but they got no hands.
Yeah, what do they do when they get there?
How are they actually doing? Unless they bite you, what are they doing to hurt you?
They knock you out with their wheel.
Oh,
They can't get up. They can't go upstairs, can they? Because she runs.
Carry some marbles around, and whenever they come near, she's like, "There you go." Like, shit! No.
Sorry, I'll let you go back to that point. But I agree with you. I feel like I've heard a lot of the pre stuff, and even very early on in shooting, there was a lot of issues around this movie.
Even things like he spent like months doing location scouting to find the perfect spot for Oz to like really represent it, and then at the last minute, the producers were like, "No location scouting. It's all going to be shot on sound stages." So then he had to figure out how to shoot this movie all on sound stages instead of out in real locations. I'm curious to hear like your summation of how you found this film as an adult versus a kid.
Probably the same, Eric.
Oh,
when you like can't remember like how you feel about it because you just like you guys saying you've rewatched it but you can't remember this and this. Like I can remember the whole thing. Like I've seen it that many times, so I don't know if it's changed.
Is this one of your most rewatched films, do you think?
Probably like one of my most rewatched sequels.
Something else that happened, not in pre-production, but early in production of this movie, is director Walter Murch got his ass fucking fired. He got kicked off the movie because of budget concerns. Again, they'd already slashed $4 million of the budget, and they're like, this guy is out of control. His first film, by the way, his directorial debut, and his only film, is an important thing. But the way he got back onto it, for a guy who's only made one movie in his entire life, and this was his first film that he was doing, the way he got back into the movie is he called up his mates, Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas, and got them to go and lobby to Disney to get him back on. Like, that is a boss move. Whatever else you want to say about Walter Murch, like for him to be like, "Oh, I'm fired, am I? Give me 10 minutes." And then like the phone starts ringing. It's like, this is the director of The Godfather, and you're about to hear from Star Wars and Jaws. You want to fire this guy? I'm like, all right, we're sorry. We would give up. It's okay. Like, that's insane. It's insane.
What do they say? It's not about what you know, it's who you know.
Well, that's it. Well, the thing that finally got it is the studio finally agreed to bring back on because George Lucas agreed that he would, for free, finish directing the movie if they had to fire Murch again. So he would come in and take it over because in 1985, George Lucas was the fucking shit. If you could get him to direct your movie for free, they must have been like praying that Murch would stuff it up. Like, can you imagine if we had Return to Oz directed by George Lucas? Holy shit. But even post-production, like this is the sequel to Wizard of Oz, the studio dumped it. They had no confidence. It got like a really short theatrical one and then was out the door and they were done with it. Like they really, I think once they got to the end, they were just jack of this project and like, no, thank you. Which I think perhaps could be why it's disappeared from consciousness. Like people like Michelle who grew up loving it and watched it and have watched it a lot. People like Kay, myself, who are aware of it and who watched a lot of stuff when we were kids. So we VHS the crap out of it, know about it. But then you have people like I'll use my wife as an example, who is in love with the first one. It's one of her favorite films of all time. Didn't even know the sequel existed. Like she had no idea. And she watches a lot of movies. And she was like, there's a sequel to Wizard of Oz? Such a strange artifact of film history, especially now as we go on and like with the internet and people constantly reappraising what are the great films. Wizard of Oz, I feel like in the last 15 years has risen right up there with our generation. Like our parents and grandparents were always like, this movie's a classic. But I feel like our generation took our time coming around to properly being like, this is one of the top 10 all-time greatest things ever committed to celluloid. And then like 90% of those people were like, it's a shame they never made a sequel. People were like, oh wait.
They did.
They did. Also, speaking of sequels, this is the third sequel to Wizard of Oz. This is not the direct sequel. There were two other sequels before it. So this is the third feature-length sequel because before this in 1969, there was a live-action film made called The Wonderful Land of Oz, which is the first sequel. And then in 1972, there was an animated feature film that was released called Journey Back to Oz. So they'd already gone back to this world twice before. And I think, again, it's telling, I've personally never heard of those films, let alone seen them before. the original Wizard of Oz was a huge film when it came out. That can't be understated. Like, it revolutionized a lot of the techniques that they still use in cinema today, but it really captured people's imaginations. And freaking Judy Garland singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, that was her career from that point. She would just tour the world singing that song. People are like, yeah, we don't give a shit about nothing else. Just sing the Rainbow song.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we want. Like, it was a massive, massive deal. And 2 sequels that came out just vanished into obscurity. And the third one is rapidly being forgotten to time. Like, in terms of studying sequels, like we're trying to do on this show, this is the weirdest, I think, trajectory for sequels to a major motion picture going. Like, I can't think of any other film that consistently ranks in the top 10 all-time greatest films having multiple sequels just be forgotten. Like, even if you've never seen Jaws 2 or Jaws 3D, you know they exist. Even if you turn your nose up at Godfather Part 3, you know it's there. What the hell happened? How did this get cocked up so bad?
Well,
It's
it's
such
crazy.
a rich world to dive into.
Well, we were talking about earlier how it was one of the, at the time, was the biggest gap between technically the first movie and the second movie as sequels, if you call
The
them
fourth movie, though.
But yeah, like you said, like, so, well, I guess if it's an animated, thing that's an unofficial type, blah, 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 that's not counted. But then if there's that other one that exists, well, doesn't that throw a spanner in the works? I mean, what studio brought that one out? But, here we go.
Oh my God. I'm going to do another screen share because I've just found some stills from the first official sequel
Uh-oh.
with the wonderful land of Oz. And I think this is about to answer any questions that we might have about what happened to this franchise.
Jeez.
Oh, wow.
This is a real still from the real movie that is the first sequel to Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
What is
There
that
he is.
even meant to be?
I don't know. It's meant to be a feature film sequel. There we go. Look at that
Looks like
set.
Ozma.
Look at that production quality. Look at that high school production that they filmed and called a feature film. Look at the cover that they've got. It doesn't even get its own cover. If you have a close look, this is
Yeah, shares with
it's
Jack
the
and the
double
Beanstalk.
one. So many thrills you'll be Ozified. What happened to the rights of this frigging franchise that this was allowed to happen? This is absolutely insane. This is insane. Look at the Tin Man. They've got Jack Pumpkinhead. They got a real pumpkin and just cut it out, put it in a guy's head. Look at the Scarecrow. Look at his nose. He's painted his nose green. Look at this somber little bastard here. He knows what a bad movie he's wound up in. I don't know who the hell this bug-headed guy with a mustache, and this actor, he can't see. Whatever he's doing in this movie, he's doing absolutely blind. Oh my God, that's
It's like mod with
Barbarella.
Is it a porno? Is this sequel? Look at that.
Is that why we've never heard of it?
Holy crap. This is also that guy's makeup is the more I see it, the more upsetting it is. It looks like they put a bug face on a human.
Yeah.
And tried to make him cute. Like, we have got to find this film and talk about it. Jesus.
She looks semi-recognizable.
Let's do a quick glance at the cast list here. Directed by Barry Mann, written by Barry Mahan, however you want to say that. George Wordsworth, Michael Thomas. I don't
recognize anyone.
Don't recognize a single. No, you're right. That is Ozma. So we've got Ozma there.
The Woggle Bug is that?
The Woggle Bug. Of course, that's what he's fucking called. Of course, he's called the Woggle Bug. Jesus, this is just.
There's Mombi.
Mombi. Oh, is Mombi the witch with multiple heads? Is that the one?
Yeah.
All right.
And I think I've heard of Tip. I think that's like based on the book.
So something that's quite telling about this cast, if you have a look, if anyone here is familiar with IMDb, actors, usually put up headshots, or sometimes if they haven't acted in a while, it might be from a really famous film they've done. So every one of these actors, their headshot is
from the movie.
From this movie. So I feel like this is the only thing they ever did in their entire.
Did it even get released? Like, it's kind of.
I'll make that go away, and I'm just gonna
go down the rabbit hole.
Roll. My God! I mean, suddenly, Return to Oz
is great.
I got a lot less questions about that movie now. I'm way less worried. No Dorothy though. It looks like in this, the storyline for that one is after his witch guardian Mombi threatens to turn him into a statue, young Tip decides to run off to the Emerald City with his newly animated companion Jack, which would be Pumpkinhead dude. Along the way, he meets up with General Ginger, leader of the Army of Revolt, who takes Tip prisoner As she marches her troops to the Emerald City, Tip escapes, warns the Scarecrow, who is now ruler of the city. So this shows us King Scarecrow. They leave to find the Tin Woodman and form their own army. 3 people is not an army. The first piece of trivia for this movie is that Barry Mann, the writer and director, told Variety that he was in negotiations to get Judy Garland to perform in the film. That never happened. He made that up. So he knew how to spin. Wow.
This is like a really like low budget version of the book that I feel like he's just got one of the books and he's like, we're going to do that. Because there's no Nome King, is there?
There's nothing. It looks like literally the cast, 9 actors credited with 1 uncredited voice actor. There's only 9 people in the whole movie. Like, I wonder if they just did, you know, that thing that like sometimes popped out in the 80s where they would just film a stage play of something. Like the George and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat with Donny Osmond. And it's just a stage play and they film it. I wonder if they did this.
It's like a school production.
This freaking Wogglebug is going to haunt my dreams. I don't know what the hell was going on there. So it's you've got to know what came before you when you're looking at sequels. And I think it's important that everyone who ever wants to watch Return to Oz goes and checks out The Wonderful Land of Oz before they do. Because I think it'll help them out. It'll help them learn a thing or two. Oh, just baffling stuff. Absolutely baffling stuff. I will have to do a deep dive and see if we can all figure out where the rights for this went, and we can chuck it up on the Instagram or something to try and explain, because I haven't been able to figure it out before and I can't figure it out now. But there's multiple like direct-to-video animated versions of The Wizard of Oz, like the original film, where they just like, we're making this again as a cartoon, you can't stop us. So obviously the rights are pretty loose. It's just there to be dealt with however you want, which is weird because I didn't think it would be out of copyright in 1969, but what do I know? I'm not a lawyer.
But if they followed the book, then maybe.
But I would presume MGM would have like bought up the right. Maybe this is like the case that gets used now for whenever somebody buys a property, like, and we buy the rights to everything in perpetuity throughout the known universe.
But it is a funny debate, and let's probably not go right down the rabbit hole, but it's a bit like the James Bond thing. Like Harry Saltzman and Cubby Broccoli bought the rights to the Bond books, but someone had already bought the rights to Casino Royale, which was the first book, so they couldn't make Casino Royale, and that was made as a telly movie. But they
comedy
had the rights
with Peter Sellers.
The original one was actually a TV movie first, and then,
is that first?
Yeah,
right. Jesus.
Like it was a black and white TV. Yeah, I've seen it with. Like I've got on video somewhere. But then they got the rights to all the books. But then that was one of those controversies that Casino Royale was already bought the rights for, but then Ian Fleming sold the rest of the rights to obviously MGM, or they made sure they acquired them at the time. So same thing could have happened here, that The Wizard of Oz was bought by MGM, the first book or whatever, and then no subsequent books had them, or they had the rights to them, they did nothing with them, and then they surprisingly lapsed not long after. Like, it's not like they have them forever. Like, you're thinking about 1969, it's probably 15, 20, 30 years. Those rights expire or they get held over to somebody else, and this guy's gone,
maybe he's just a smart man with high school that he can rent the stage of for $10 an hour and a couple of what a great
that shot. I was going to say that shot
for a documentary, the making of that movie.
The shot that you had of Ozma there, that looked like they were literally at a high school, and it was the local, the school that's just whipped together or something.
Yeah, it looks like he stood at the steps of the local high school, and when he saw a girl he thought would fit the costume, he was like, "You want to be in pictures, don't you?" And she's like, okay. And then she turned around and went back into her high school with him. And she's like, what's happening? He's like, we're going to the gym. And then she's like, I thought I was going to Hollywood. He's like, this is Hollywood. He's trying to trick her. He's just painted the word Hollywood on the wall. It's like, there's the sign, kid.
And it's probably made somewhere in Ohio or something like that.
Kansas.
Freaking hell. Should we get back to talking about the movie we're talking about?
Yeah, we should.
Veruza Balk. What do we think about her as a replacement for Judy Garland? Because I have always liked Veruza Balk, but I don't think Return to Oz when I think Veruza Balk. I think I was paying more attention.
The Craft. You think The Craft?
I think The Craft around that era, The Water Boy. That was sort of the period of time that I was like, Veruza Balk's cool, man. She's kind of crazy looking, but in a fun way. But as the child star, the 10-year-old, I think Judy Garland was 16. I think Veruza Balk was 10 when she took over the role. What do we think about her as a replacement?
It's different because how do you replace Judy? But Judy, no disrespect, was there for other reasons. Obviously she brought so much more to the role in that the singing component to it. They've gone for, I guess, I would say realism, in that they've gone for a kid that's more that closer to the real age of what Dorothy should be. And I think I did say this on an episode that will be coming up soon, but similar to Danielle Harris in Halloween 4, I think she's pretty good in this. Like I said, for her first thing, like you'd expect it to be her. If you had told me it's her fourth, fifth movie and she was a child prodigy, like, and had been in a few films, I would have believed you. But you find out it's her first major role. She's pretty good.
What do you think, Michelle?
I thought she was great. And did you see who she beat out for the role?
Oh, do you want to read some of the names that were there?
So Juliette Lewis, Elizabeth Berkley, Alanis Morissette, and one of our favorites, Miss Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, she really knocked them out of the park. I think she's great. I think she's the best thing in the movie. I think like she really carries it so well.
And this is sad. This is sad because I think, unfortunately, this is the world we live in, and at the end of the day, movies are made for entertainment, but also the underlying thing for the studios is to make money, spend money, and make a lot of money. It's interesting to think that I'm glad that she got picked. And I think she was a really good Dorothy, but you kind of think Drew Barrymore would have been the better money maker, and possibly the movie got seen by a few more eyeballs, a few more tickets sold. And I think Drew Barrymore would have been good too, but it is what it is, isn't it? I'm glad they backed themselves in to pick the person they thought was the best for the role.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reality is she's at the time was definitely a known name. It's not someone that everyone's flocking to the cinemas to go see either. So
no, I guess the benefit you have when you're making a movie that has the word Oz in the title is like people are coming because it's the sequel to Wizard of Oz, not because these days it wouldn't happen. You'd almost never see a no name get thrown into a major sequel franchise. They'd probably have to have some kind of TV background or at least a freaking TikTok following to get the part.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
No pun intended. So I think it is great. I think like you're talking about, they were going for a more grounded, I think, version of Oz and of the world that they were creating. Right. I mean, it's not a musical, so there's less fancifulness, even though it's a fantasy. It's not as fanciful. There's not like, crazy swirling dance numbers and, big musical breaks you have to deal with. So you can ground it a bit more. And I think for this world, like getting Fairuza Balk in is great because she looks like she could handle herself. Like when shit starts to really go down, I buy it. When she's like facing off against the Nome King and yelling at him and like getting really pissed off, I was like, yeah, I buy that you have got some fire in your belly. I think if you got Judy Garland Dorothy and Fairuza Balk Dorothy together, I think Fairuza Balk Dorothy would kick the shit out of her. I think she'd knock her down a flight of stairs.
Oh, how's that for a multiverse?
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. I would like to see that. If they want to use like deep fakes, someone out there to make the next Wizard of Oz movie and it's Dorothy versus Dorothy, I think it would be a short movie because I think Fairuza Balk Dorothy is she's way ballsier.
She did her own stunts as well, I saw.
She did her own stunts?
Yeah, all of her own stunts.
Man, I knew there's a reason that I liked her so much. Just a crazy, crazy cool person. I mean, she grew up ready for this kind of stuff. Like her dad was a traveling musician and her mum was a belly dancer. Like she grew up ready to just get into some wild shit. It's like, hey, we want you to go and fight this rock monster that's a Nome King, but it's spelt wrong. And she's like, all right, cool, man. You don't know what I've seen, man. I've had a wild 10 years. I'll get into it. Let's go. Yeah, really great direction. And the smartest decision I think anyone made in this movie was casting her to be the Dorothy. Because that must have been the biggest problem with like making this movie is sitting down and being like, who do we get?
Mm-hmm.
Who do we, like every single person who watches this movie, the second that she comes on screen is going to be like, she's not as good as Judy Garland. She's not Judy Garland. Who's she think? Like you're starting on such a back foot. Incredible that they managed to pull it off. Not
does
really.
Does it kind of set the tone a little bit like I said, like the whole again, right, going back to the start of the film, you got Dorothy potentially getting strapped down to be electric shock treatment, but then she sort of escapes, and when she sort of gets back to land, it's like, oh my God, this is our house, and this is, oh my God, the Yellow Brick Road, and it's just like, and that was the thing that freaked me out, and even, rewatching, it's like, oh, that's just seeing the Yellow Brick Road just being sort of just almost like ripped apart. You're like,
that was a ballsy move.
I was going to say,
allow that to happen.
This is a big deal. This is not good.
Yeah.
And it was, though, having said that, I will question the continuity in that her journey to the Emerald City was very quick compared to the original movie, but just seeing it,
because you didn't have to stop and sing a fucking song every 5 minutes. You can move so much quicker
and pick up someone along the way. Yeah, but yeah, I mean
that helps scarecrows.
That kind of does let you in on that. Oh, this is not the same movie anymore. This isn't going to be the colorful Technicolor musical extravaganza of the original. This is oh no, something's gone awry. A bit like going to a multiverse, or almost like Back to the Future 2, going back in time and going, hang on, I've stuffed something up in the past, but I've come back now. Why is everything completely flipped on its head? It's like to see the yellow brick road just like so disheveled and just just destroyed. And you go, hang on a sec, this ain't good.
Yeah, and it is like a very clear statement of what they're intending for this film is like, we are going to quite literally destroy everything you loved about the first movie, and it's on purpose. Like every single element that you looked at in the first movie is like I think you could point to anything in the first movie that someone says that's my favorite bit, and then point to a scene in Return to Oz and that's where the director chose to destroy that for you.
Yeah.
Even starting the film, they don't start in black and white and go to Technicolor. They start in quite a washed out, dark looking filter. And then when they get to Oz, it's not that much brighter.
No.
It's like a little bit better. And then it's like, yeah, Oz is shit as well. Everything's shit, kid. I'm sorry to tell you, there's no escape this time.
Yeah.
You go from bad to worse.
Well, I was going to say the yellow brick road is definitely not very yellow anymore.
No.
Obviously, really stuff. And then you obviously get to Emerald City, and the Emerald City's almost not really. The emeralds have been stolen by the Nome King, so it's just this rundown garbage town almost.
This film does feel like it's about the world of Oz is about, I don't know, one suburban block big though, and I think that's probably the shooting on soundstage. But as soon as she gets there, and she's like, "Oh, this is the desert that surrounds Oz, and if you step on it, you turn immediately into sand."
Yeah, the deadly desert, as she calls it.
Yeah. Why don't the rocks turn to sand? I wonder. Maybe rocks seem fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she gets over that, but then later when she's flying in the moose couch back over to the rocks, she gets to that desert so quickly from where she was. And then that desert lasts not very long. And then they're at the mountains, and they can see back where they came from when they got to the mountains. And it's like, oh, is Oz just a tiny little island?
Yeah.
It's just this tiny little friggin' thing.
Yeah, it's definitely like they haven't worked out the geography of it very well.
Because the first one, it feels like this grand sweeping place that could go anywhere forever, and it's huge and magical. And this one's it's about I don't know, 1/8 of the size of one corner of Phillip Island, maybe.
Yeah.
Judy Garland took the long way.
Just kept dancing. We told her, just follow that road.
Just literally walk with a brisk pace instead of
go
just
get around the corner. You'll be there in 15 minutes. It's not. You can see the spire from where we're standing. Just go.
Well, she had the Scarecrow just pointing in all different directions.
And they made that dickhead king. I mean, my God.
Yeah.
Apart from Fruza Bulk, not really anyone else that went on to great acclaim. Piper Laurie is Aunt M. She has a small role as Aunt M.
Yes, and I remember her from
exactly. No, I know her from Twin Peaks and from The Faculty. That's what I know.
I was going to say The Faculty was something.
She's one of the teacher Faculty, and I love Twin Peaks, so I knew her from that. She also is in Carrie, of course. Brian De Palma's Carrie.
Who was she in The Faculty? Because I've seen that now.
She's
Mrs. Karen Olsen,
the crazy one from the start.
Yes.
Ah.
Yeah. And she also is a Margaret White. She's Carrie's mum in Carrie. TikTok.
Carrie, have you seen Carrie, Michelle?
Yes, I have.
Oh!
Both versions, before you ask, and the sequel.
Wow, I'm amazed you've seen the original. I I thought you were just going to say the remake. Tin Man.
Hang on. Yeah, no, I'm just in shock.
It's wild.
But I'm happy. I'm very happy to hear that. I'm really wrapped.
Maybe that has to be the next episode. Maybe we can do the Rage Carrie 2.
I liked that one.
No, I haven't watched that.
You could make so many filmmakers happy in this world by just saying, it's me. You made this movie. I'm the one.
Yeah.
I'm the one who likes it. You made this movie for me, guys. I'm a big fan of the Rage Carrie Part 2.
Michelle's probably the only person that saw American Psycho 2 but didn't see the first one.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Because Miller was in it. No?
Who's in?
Mila Kunis is the...
Oh, I thought
American
you said
Psycho
Ezra
2.
Miller. You said Ezra Miller's in it. I was like, I don't think Ezra Miller. Yeah, Mila Kunis is the Psycho in American Psycho 2. That is definitely one we have to talk about in an upcoming episode, because that is the wildest detour from the source material and the original film that I can think of off the top of my head. Deep Roy is the Tin Man. Deep Roy, the only other thing I really know Deep Roy from is playing every single Oompa Loompa in Tim Burton's
Willy
Charlie
Wonka.
and the Chocolate Factory, or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Tim Rose is TikTok. Tim Rose is also Admiral Akbar. So obviously George Lucas hooking up a bro there.
He's also backwards and upside down.
Well, yeah. So an acrobat did the movement of.
Yeah, he's the legs are the guy's arm.
Yeah, so he's like, is that right? He's doing like a handstand
Yeah, he's
and his face is in the
backwards
butt.
and upside down. Yeah.
Because when I looked, I read that and then I like went back and looked at a portion of the film. I was like, I don't understand how, like, knowing what I know about that, I still don't understand where this guy's head is. Like, I don't know where in the butt of TikTok there is room for a human head. If
Yeah.
he's also got his arms, like, that's a very short distance, and the legs come right off the butt. Like, there's no room
Yeah.
for the head.
Yeah, but isn't he? I think it's just his head's tucked in, no?
But he must be like,
Must be upside down. Yeah. Yeah.
like he would almost have to suffocate to do it. So he's definitely the MVP of this movie
Mhm.
because the
He
effort he
must
went to that
calisthenics.
no one would appreciate or understand.
Well, he was a gymnast, so yeah.
But also, I watched it a few times and I'm sure they could have just done it with a guy standing up if they had have.
Because
just
his
thought it
arms are
through.
so far out, like his legs are so far out from his body as well that just seems uncomfortable. I have seen
Yeah.
behind the scenes pictures. I'll have to find
If
them.
you had a puppeteer like in it with like
Yeah.
he was crouching and he had like sticks that he was moving, or you said, I don't like if they had wanted to, they could have saved that guy a lot of trouble. Michael Sundin was the TikTok acrobat, and Tim Rose is the TikTok voice.
I was going to say the funny thing about that too, I agree. It's like it's kind of cool to have someone that's acrobatically doing something that making a character believable that would not necessarily be believable to us normally. And if that takes someone being upside down, doing a handstand and whatever, I get that. But I agree with you too. I think I still feel like surely there's someone
There's
out
easier
there that
ways?
could sit there.
Definitely.
And I was like, I don't understand. It feels like a lot more extra work.
This is probably where the director put like way too much of his attention and energy. It's like, we've got to figure out how to make TikTok walk right. And he came up with the most convoluted way. And meanwhile, they're like, hey, so like Scarecrow's head, and also we've got this storyline with this witch with multiple heads that doesn't really go anywhere. Like, she changes her heads, but it doesn't really mean. Do we need to flesh that out? He's like, no, shut up. I'm thinking this out. So he's gonna do a handstand and put his friggin' legs in the arms. And like, yeah, okay, but for real though, like Walter, there's like 90% of this movie that there's like pages missing from the script or something. He's like, no. Robot is everything. The robot is the key.
Trust me, TikTok is the future.
Yeah.
If you get TikTok right, everything will come into place. The only other notable cast member in this movie that I can find is Brian Henson doing the voice of Jack Pumpkinhead.
Yeah.
Which is the best character voice in the film for my money. Like, really, for a head with a face that doesn't move.
Mm-hmm.
For me not to constantly be looking at it going, that guy's mouth is moving when he's talking. This is fucking dumb. Like, he's so good at voicing that character. I didn't really care that the mouth didn't move. It was only like every couple of scenes I'd be like, his fucking mouth just doesn't move.
Yeah, it's funny.
How did this get through?
You say that now, and I didn't even really think about that because I was more mesmerized by the 1985 special effects to make him just even walk around.
Mhm.
That's
be
pretty
a
cool.
Stick figure. And I'm
It's
like,
pretty cool.
I'm like, yeah, I like this character, and he's moving around, and I'm not seeing any wires or special effects. I'm like looking for it, I'm not seeing it. So
And
I feel like that part was really like Henson really sharing a few trade secrets.
100%.
And he's the inspiration for Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yep, of course. That movie just ripped off everything. Good God.
And did you see the Gnome King was almost played by Christopher Lloyd or Tim Curry?
Wow, I would have loved to see a Tim Curry Gnome King. That would have been amazing. Lloyd would have been good, but he would have been like wacky as shit.
Lloyd, I'm pretty sure Lloyd couldn't because he was doing Back to the Future.
There you go. But Tim Curry, like, he's just naturally menacing, and I think Fruza Bulk would really match his energy with that. That's a missed opportunity.
It is, but I mean,
not for Tim Curry. He did better, but it's a missed
He
opportunity.
did okay.
I mean, what else do you want to talk about this movie? Where else do you want to go with this?
How do those ruby slippers fit the Gnome King and also fit Dorothy?
Well, I mean, that's one of the few things I do buy because he can change into any shape he wants. He'll just make his feet smaller. He doesn't have feet. He
They look
pulls
like
them out
giant shoes when he shows them. That part always got me.
Yeah, they probably are. I know that
But
the shoes
it's
were
about-
a fucking nightmare on set because the glue they used kept melting, so they wouldn't let her wear them at all unless they were going to be a close-up.
Mhm.
Because the costume department got sick of gluing on sequins.
which is crazy because it feels like I remember reading that as one of those trivia facts on the movie, and then you watch the movie and you go, how often was she even in the
She's
River?
not.
Like,
She wears them for
No.
like one shot.
and exactly, it's not like she's wearing them right through her, trip through Oz again. It's like, pretty sure you're showing him for one or two shots.
Yeah, I think I read she didn't even like wearing the black shoes. I think she might be like barefoot for a lot of it.
Just really poorly made shoes. Like the second they put them on, people are like, "What are you doing? You can't use this." There is another Return to Oz as well that they made in the '60s,
What?
which is animated and has nothing to do with this one. So again, what is going on with the rights? That would be a fun thing though, if a bunch of filmmakers, like if Paramount and Sony and Disney and a bunch of other big studios figured out they could all get their hands on the right to like Return to Oz, and just were like, all right, we're all going to make one at the same time, and then we're going to keep doing this every 3 years. We're just going to release another version of Return to Oz and see what happens.
But
just as a game.
But
just for
don't
fun.
studios they've gone through phases where they do shit like that anyway? Like a script goes around Hollywood and someone likes it, but they knock it back and they go, we'll do our own version. And it's like, oh, hang on, we're going to do Deep Impact. But, well, we'll do Armageddon. And then the next, we're doing Bugs Life. We'll do Ants. And it's like, come on, like get your own material.
Oh, yeah. But even like with more specific stuff, like there's stuff that goes in public domain. I think there was about 3 other Sherlock Holmes movies that were in development when Guy Ritchie was making his Sherlock Holmes, and the other producers eventually were like, he's further ahead, he's going to beat us, fuck it, just take it. And then I think one of them wound up becoming the Sherlock TV show, because they're like, he beat us with the movie. That's why they're so close together.
Yeah.
So sometimes like there's public domain stuff where everyone is racing and they figure out like whoever finishes first is gonna either win by getting the best box office, or it's going to be a shit movie and no one's going to want to go and see the next one because they won't understand that they're not connected at all. Or they'll go and see it and be like, wait, I love the first one, but this is Season of the Witch all over again. I'm so angry. Like it won't,
Yeah.
So I get that part, but I would, if they just announced it, they're like, we know every major studio is doing Return to Oz. It's on purpose.
Yeah.
And we're going to just do this until we get bored of it because it's fun. We're going to see how weird we can get with this shit, because believe me, man, we can get weird.
Really weird.
Well, all that rights crap is why we're getting Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Yeah.
But we can't get Tigger because they still have the rights to Tigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
That's why we got a Clarice TV show. The same thing happened talking about rights, like when they made Silence of the Lambs, the studio, because they'd already made Red Dragon and Manhunter. So they'd already made Manhunter. So the rights to the storyline and to the Hannibal Lecter character were bought by one studio. And then they made Silence of the Lambs, and that studio just quietly bought the rights to Clarice Starling because they knew they'd probably want to do more. And then when they were trying to make the movie Hannibal, it was a friggin' nightmare because 3 different people own the rights to 3 different characters, and they eventually settled it.
Wrong.
And then the studio was like, we're not going to make any more of these movies. And then somebody was like, hey, we own the rights to Clarice Starling. They're like, oh, we're going to make a Clarice show. So it just keeps going on forever and ever and ever.
Oh, and don't start me on bloody superhero characters with X-Men being owned by Fox and then Disney owning.
I mean, that is the ultimate, really. Like, this is a Disney movie, and Disney has just gone and done the most gangster thing over the last few years. They're like, we want to make this movie. And they're like, we own the rights. Like, all right, fuck it. We're just going to buy Fox. How do you feel about that? And they're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
We want the X-Men, so we're going to buy the entire studio. And then Sony was like, you're not getting Spider-Man. Like, all right, we're going to bury you. And they're like, okay, no, co-production. But that's why we have Venom movies, because they were like, we're not giving you Venom. And Marvel's like, we don't care. We have everything else now. It's like a Monopoly game where you've just absolutely destroyed your little brother. And he's like, I've still got the power station. You're like, keep it, fuckhead. I don't care. Have you seen the properties I own? There's 9 hotels on Fleet Street. You're fucked. For a film that goes for nearly 2 hours, I feel like there's not.
It doesn't feel like that long.
It doesn't.
It's like, I was never bored. Yeah.
And there's not a great deal to like pull apart in it, because even as it moves, the stuff just kind of happens, or is just not explained or not dealt with again, or treated like you don't care. So when you step back and look at the film as a whole, what is this film about? Can you tell me what this film's about, Michelle? Pretend I've never seen Return to Oz. And tell me what Return to Oz is about.
Dorothy returns to Oz.
Great. Tick. Yep.
She's trying to get the Emerald City back to the way it was.
Is she?
Isn't she? She's trying to find the Scarecrow. Isn't that the whole point?
I honestly don't know. I'm not being funny. I honestly don't know.
I'm sure that's what it is. She's trying to get back to the Scarecrow to return Oz to how it was when she was there the last time.
Right. Okay. And is that what happens in this movie?
Well, she finds him in the end, so yes.
But like by accident.
Hmm.
Like she doesn't track him down. It's almost like it's coincidental at the end. Like she rescues. Does she rescue Scarecrow first when she goes in that fucking room full of
I
objects?
think so. Yeah.
But she's in there looking for TikTok and for
Sorry,
Moosehead and
Because
for
TikTok pretends to wind himself down to help her, work out which ornaments to choose.
that's right. That does happen.
Yeah, that's why he's still in there to help
That's
her
like the
out.
one bit of clever writing in the film, and I forgot it.
Yeah, because he's like, watch what ornament I turn into, which to be honest doesn't really help because the lights all go down and then he's just gone, and you're like, well, where the fuck is TikTok?
Like he's not the smartest dude.
No.
We learned this very early on.
Yeah.
He's not a very clever man. He has one
No,
good
but-
idea, and then it turns out to not be very well thought out.
But in fairness, when you sort of think if you were going to turn into something, you'd probably turn into something and stay in that position. Yeah, well, that's TikTok. But
But he
obviously,
doesn't.
He was upside down.
Yes,
All the blood
right.
was rushing to his head. He's
Yeah.
not the guy we should be listening to. What we haven't touched on at all is the horrific existential crisis the fucking Moosehead must be going through. In this
Yes.
movie. Like he's a reanimated Moosehead who, when he
Mm.
comes to life, his body's a couch and his fucking arms are plants. And then that breaks, but he's still alive just as a head. So he's a living
Yeah.
severed head.
I feel like he has a good joke. I can't remember what he says exactly, but it's something to do with him like getting shot.
I feel like he has a couple of good one-liners.
Mm.
Can I remember one off the top of my head? No.
I can't
But,
even remember if that fucking guy if the moose like makes it to the end of the movie. Does he do it?
That's what I was wondering too, because she doesn't.
Yeah, he's there at the end. Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
I think she just saves him before the Gnome King, ruins the ornament room. No, she doesn't. No, she doesn't.
So is he just
He's not an ornament. She doesn't find him, but at the end they
He's
somehow.
definitely there in the
Oh,
parade when everyone's
yeah.
celebrating.
Yeah, I remember now. He's like an ornament that got stuck to something else. So at the end, she turns him back.
What, by actually she doesn't even look for him? She
No,
turns someone
'cause-
else back. She's like, fucking Moosehead, what are
Because
you
he
doing
like
here?
because he sets like the room on fire, but when they get like transported back to like the grassy area, he's like hanging on something. He's like an ornament
Yeah.
on someone.
He got saved. He's not dead.
Yeah, he got saved. Because I was watching
Just-
that too. I've seen it so many times, and I was like, "What about the moose?" And I was like, "Oh no, he's fine."
I wish, like, at the end when they're all saved and he's there just as a head, he just been like, "Let me die. What are you doing? This is hell. Do you know what? I'm a head on a board. Please, you keep tying me to furniture and making me fly. I'm not a flight animal. Do you have any idea how unnatural this is for me? I was a land animal, for Christ's sake. You didn't even give me legs. You just tie me to a fucking couch.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Go and find another living animal and put my head on that if you want me to be alive. Go and get that witch queen. That would have been a great ending if they got the witch queen and punched her head off and clicked his head on. He's like, oh my God, a human body. I have opposable thumbs. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. That's a great ending for the movie. What did they do?
credits.
Take him? Did they just hang him on the wall at Scarecrow's house just so he could make quips?
Well, yeah, I don't know. He's not
Like
in
a
the Emerald.
dinosaur in Flintstones.
He's not in
Just
the Emerald
walks in, he's like,
City.
it's a living.
Yeah,
Poor fucking guy.
he's not in the end, is he?
Probably
thought he
not.
was.
They probably just left him by the side of the road.
Are
Like,
you
this is
sure?
rubbish.
No.
This
I
is
thought he
garbage now.
was.
We don't need you. We don't need to fly anymore.
Because if you brought him back to full life, wouldn't he be a full moose? There's no moose.
His body
In the
is
Emerald.
decomposed. It's bones. His head is only still there because they filled it with formaldehyde. He's not.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a brain. They took that out when they stuffed him with sawdust. He shouldn't be alive. Leave him alone. This poor guy.
Great character.
I was going to actually say, like, we're talking about things that are kind of demented for kids and or frightening. And I feel like any time you do mention Return to Oz to people my generation, it's like, oh my God, those guys on the wheels and stuff like that. The wheels. Yeah, I think they freaked a lot of people out. But you know what? Someone that takes her head off and changes it, pretty creepy.
But so
Yeah,
for
convenient.
kids. Oh, no,
Very
convenient.
convenient.
Like I'd fucking love it too.
It's great character
But-
design. What a strange and upsetting, but also like fascinating character design to have. It's like, yeah, it's a person who instead of like usually the bad guy has like a claw and then they take it off and then it's a flamethrower or something for their hand. It's like, no, I'm just going to change my head.
Mhm.
I don't know what benefit there is, honestly, to that. It's not like she's constantly getting new ones and throwing the old ones out. She keeps them all.
You could look like Glenn Powell, more so.
It's about.
Or
I thought it
already
was
do.
about.
So
I thought it was just like
Mate.
also a vain thing of having the young, new, beautiful face that you can change into,
why
which
keep the
makes
haggard
perfect
over?
sense. But you're right; it does kind of have this weird thing of like, well, whose brain is it? It's kind of a bit.
Yeah, why are they all in cabinets? And
And why is there not a scene where she's making them all kiss? She's like, that's the first. If you had multiple heads in cupboards, as soon as no one's around, you'd be like, I'm going to make all my heads kiss. Yum, 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 yum.
And then they
Yum, 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 yum.
and then they did that in Spaceballs when he had the figurines.
Yes, it's exactly what you do. Kiss them. Yum, 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 yum.
oh, Christ.
Well, it's a weird movie, so you got to have Angus get weird.
Yeah. And the weirdest thing about this movie, which we haven't touched on yet, is the
Oh, there's
way
weird
in,
in that.
It's
the way in
ruined now.
which they chose to like
Kill the bad
defeat
guy?
the
Yeah.
villain. A chicken,
Eggs.
a chicken gets so scared, a chicken shits in the bad guy's mouth, which for
No,
a chicken is
isn't
an
it
egg.
an egg? It's
But
like an egg.
that's what she gets so scared. She gets so scared, she's like, and she shits out an egg. That's what happens. That's the implication. She's so scared she shits herself, but because she's a chicken, an egg comes out. And
That's not how eggs
big
work.
reveal, the big reveal, it is. You scare a chicken, they shit out.
Yeah.
That's how we get eggs. You just trying to go, bah, and, they go, and then you have breakfast. It's science, Michelle. Please, come on. This is a serious podcast. But then the chicken like shits an egg in his mouth. And the big reveal is he's allergic to eggs.
Mm.
And that's why everyone hates chickens.
It's poison.
I thought
Poison.
like in the land of Oz, chickens have magic powers, or like their talons can rip through anything, or like if he saw a chicken, she'd grow to like Hulk size and be able to fuck. No, he's just got an egg allergy. It's just like he didn't have
It
an
happens.
EpiPen. That's how they win this
Well,
movie. He couldn't
you know
get
what?
his EpiPen.
I totally hear what you're saying, and I agree. It kind of feels lame, but I feel like it's kind of on par with the witch, the getting water on her and melting. Like it's
How
kind
does
of.
she shower?
She doesn't. That's why she's green. Filthy
Yeah.
bitch.
But I feel like that's like they probably go, well, how do we end this movie? And it has to be Belina has to lay an egg. Or,
Are you listening to what you're saying? It's like they
Well,
were sitting there having the meeting, saying, "Hey, how do we end this movie?" And someone went, "It has to be Belina shitting an egg in his mouth." That's guys. It's the only way. Come on. Am I crazy here? Am I the only one who understands how storytelling works?
No, yes, no.
There's a lot
I
of
get it
drugs
too.
in that room.
And I think it's I think it's lame, but they probably thinking, oh well, eggs are a bit worse than water. Like vegans don't like eggs. Like
Yeah,
Gnome King is a vegan.
that's it.
Yes.
And he was so triggered when they put an egg in him. He was like, "I would rather die."
Which is look, I agree. It's really, really lame way it's ended. Like, but it kind of makes sense. The Belina character is like, well, she's in Kansas. She comes back, or somehow she's with her again. Now she talks. And you do think, if you haven't seen the movie for a long time, or the first time you've seen it, you're like, where's this going with this chicken? And then all of a sudden it's like she's the
the
key
hero.
element to defeat the Gnome King. It's kind of
It's
crazy.
just-
But
like when the movie finished, I went into the other room and saw my wife, who left because she didn't want to watch it. And she said, "Is it over?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "What happened?" And I said, "They defeat the Gnome King because a chicken shits an egg into his mouth and he's allergic to eggs." And she said, "No, seriously, what happened?" I said, "Seriously." And she got so angry at me, she told me to leave the room because she thought that I wasn't answering her question. And then I was like, I eventually I had to like bring up the synopsis on the internet and be like, just read this. And she's like, oh my fuck. She was so mad. Like, that's how ridiculous it is. If you tell people who haven't seen this movie, that's how it ends, they will get mad at you for not answering their question seriously. It is so insane. Like, you say water is a bit weird, but like,
it's not weird, but I think if they're trying to think of something that just feels like an everyday thing, like you don't have to have some super laser weapon or flamethrower or something. If it can be something Dorothy can easily access, I kind of go, well, the fact that it's allergic to the chicken and or the egg of the chicken, it seems so utterly ridiculous. But it's like, but then that's the same thing in the first movie. The witch is so powerful. Like, who would have ever thought that just simple water, a bit like throwing it on a mugwai, how does water like destroy this witch? And I'm not trying to justify the other one, but I'm kind of thinking, were they trying to think same ballpark area for how do we defeat this villain? Well, we're going to make it simple as this.
I think when you say the sentence, were they trying to think, you're already giving them too much credit.
But how good are lunch pail trees? I was always so jealous of that as a kid.
That's great. That's creativity. That's exciting. That's interesting. That's fantastic. Having an egg defeat the villain is like they got to the last day of shooting, like, fuck, we are out of budget. And while the director was trying to figure it out, someone walked over to the catering table and were like, huh, hey, Walt, I got hard-boiled eggs today. Do you just want to chuck one of those down his throat, see what happens? Like, yeah, man, I got to, George Lucas is going to kill me if I get fired. Please just give me this. I don't want to piss him off. Just what a ride. What a ride back to the land of Oz. It kind of goes to show that even though the wizard was a big lying sack of shit, he kind of kept things in order, because without him, everything just spirals off into fucking madness. Like, what would you prefer? Some guy who keeps everything good but is, pretending to have magic powers, or this chicken allergy friggin' Nome King who's just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Fairuza Balk, like, she loves her a witch movie. She was also in The Worst Witch. She was in The Craft. She's a witch-a woman. Instantly regret saying that.
We can cut that.
No,
this film also has like a body count. Like 8 people die in this movie. Like 6 of the Wheelers die. They get turned into sand.
Oh yeah.
The Gnome King,
really? It was 6 of them, really?
Six Wheelers die from
Wow.
the deadly desert. The Gnome King dies from a food allergy, is what is written here, but fucking egg in the throat. Dr. Wally, the guy's trying to electrocute her, he dies in the fire at the children's hospital.
The Gnome King. That's
yeah,
why.
he's the Nome King. That's why.
Yeah, but it's 2 different characters.
But
one is in the land of Oz, and one
isn't it a bit? You were there. You were there.
Yeah.
Are you trying to tell me the farmhand is really a fucking lion in the first one?
Yes.
If he takes off that shirt, everyone's gonna be like, "Damn, Jerry, what the hell is that? Have you got a tail?" He's like, "Oh, jeez."
That's good.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big body count. I mean, for a movie that starts with electrocuting children, it's not that crazy, but 8 people dead in a Wizard of Oz movie feels wrong a bit, I think. Does anyone die in the first one? Like, properly die?
Well, one of the witches.
The witch. Yeah. 2 of the witches.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One
I
had a
guess the
house
witches.
fall on her.
But they're all like...
And I feel like if they remade it, there'd be some like flying monkeys that would cop bloody something to the head.
Yeah.
What do you mean? If they remake it, they are remaking it.
Are they really?
There's 2 versions of The Wizard of Oz coming out. They're remaking.
Please enlighten us. What's going on?
Oh, I would have to look it up, but they're remaking The Wizard of Oz and then some other version of The Wizard of Oz.
Are they remaking Return to Oz?
I don't
Because
think so.
I'd be more excited about that, to be
I'd
honest.
be excited about that too. But yeah, they're definitely remaking The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, wow. You talk about replacing Judy Garland like that. That's going to be a
Blasphemous.
I know, that's what I said.
I feel like that might fall into the category of like one of those films where everyone is just like, no.
Don't touch it.
Like The Godfather, Jaws, Back to the
Casablanca.
Future, the first Star Wars cast. Like there are some films that are like, no, their place
Scream.
their place in film history is solidified not just by like how good they are as films, but the time that they came out and the impact they had. Like you can't just there's no need to remake The Wizard of Oz.
No.
And
well, they are.
I sort of don't understand. I can understand if it's a more serious film and it's not a musical. I can get it to a point, but I
They're
think
doing like a gritty reboot of The Wizard of Oz.
no, but
They
in
pull
all
the curtain back
seriousness,
in the West
hey,
is just shooting heroin. Like,
No.
I'm a wizard. Here's my wand.
Because he's coming up with
No,
Return to Oz and
no.
its crazy ideas.
No. But you think, well, this is where I'm a bit worried because I'm pretty sure we've all seen The Great and Powerful Oz, no?
Yes.
Yes. And that was obviously more a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. And they obviously there's elements and visuals that look the same, but they were able to do a lot more with, they could at least do in this day and age a lot more with the CGI and all that sort of stuff where they could keep it similar and the look feel like the original, but we can do flying monkeys and we can do this and that and make it look really, really good. But then that wasn't huge either, I don't feel like. Was it?
No.
I mean, I saw it at the cinemas, but it wasn't.
I saw it at the cinemas and it was a bomb.
Yeah,
It was a box office
so
bomb.
it's like, but I like James Franco. I mean, I like Mila Kunis as the Wicked Witch and stuff. But I just don't know. I was like, how are you remaking this movie unless you're really, like I said, you joked about it. I wouldn't say gritty, but I would say you'd think most people would try and keep it fairly similar. but you can expand on. Obviously, we know Judy Garland was on a couple of different sets, and there was a lot of big backdrops and or matte paintings and stuff like that, whatever that was before matte paintings, and to give it that forced perception. But yeah, you can definitely do a lot more stuff to make it more realistic. But is there much more that you can add to the Wizard of Oz that there isn't already?
I mean, two people think so. Warner Brothers and New Line are the two studios who are going for it.
Really?
The Warner Brothers one, the only details that are around are it's a modern reimagining of the classic movie, and the New Line one is a new take at Frank L. Baum's book. So the New Line one is going, we're doing the book, we're not doing, kind of like when Tim Burton did the Charlie and Chocolate Factory. He's like, I'm doing the book, not the movie. So one of them is like, we're remaking the movie, and the other is like, no, we're just making that book. They got nothing to do with each other. So as we talked about before, Hollywood is forever making the same thing at the same time. It'll be a race. I highly doubt we're going to see both versions come out. I don't think that we're going to see two different versions of the Wizard of Oz come out. I think perhaps the book one most likely will like turn into an amalgamation of a few books and won't be called the Wizard of Oz. So it's a wild ride. I think I can appreciate some of it. I think I can appreciate what it's trying to do. I think in like theory, for me, this film is like, it's great in theory. Like return to Oz and having everything just be, we're going to blow it up. Emerald City gone. Brick Road gone. The Wizard gone. All the characters you knew gone. We've got new characters around Dorothy now. Instead of Toto, there's a chicken. Instead of the Tin Man, there's a robot. I mean, they didn't try too hard. It's like, well, instead of a tin guy, we'll have a copper guy. But you know, like they blew everything up, and they're like, no, it's going to be something totally different, because while Dorothy's been away, ridiculous things have happened, and that creates a reason for her to go back in the first place, because it has a very happy ending, the first one. Why even bother to go back? There has to be a really good reason. I think in terms of a sequel having a good reason for itself to exist, like why does this character have to go through essentially the same journey again? Because that's what she does. She goes back to Oz, and she starts at one point, and she has to get to another point, and she encounters challenges along the way while trying to save people who become friends. It's the exact same story, but in order for it to exist, like something really big has to happen. What happens is all the friends she made the first time are in mortal peril, and the world that she helped save and fell in love with is destroyed. So that's pretty cool. Like theory-wise, 10 out of 10. Execution-wise, a chicken shits in a guy's mouth and the movie ends. Like, I really don't. I don't think it. I think this movie is too big of an idea for a first-time director, or this first-time director. I think like you were really starting 10 meters behind the starting line when you hired Walter Murch to make this movie. Which is a shame, because some first-time directors, knock it out of the goddamn park when they get handed franchises. But this just isn't that. It's just
play devil's advocate. Did they think, or because he had a lot of experience with his friends like George Lucas and Spielberg, and done a lot more stuff behind the scenes on big films, that there was an assumption that he brought with him a lot of experience. I just wonder if that's. I always got the impression, like with one of the documentaries, that he was obviously very passionate about this project, had some great ideas, and again, maybe that was the thing. Like he was so used to being, helping out, whether it was on Star Wars or Jaws or what have you, that he had this maybe not necessarily inflated sense of his, what he could do, but maybe he thought, oh well, this is a lot more achievable than maybe he thought, and all of a sudden it was like, oh no, it's not. It's not as easy a walk in the park as he was predicting, and Disney maybe he wasn't the man for the job. But
maybe this is a case where they're like, get me Steven Spielberg, and they couldn't get him, and he said, well, get me his non-union Mexican equivalent, and then here comes Senor Spielbergo to come and direct this movie. And they're like, yeah, it's kind of like we got Spielberg or Lucas or Francis Ford Coppola direct this, isn't it?
Yeah, he knows them.
True. He's one of their mates. He does sound. That's the same as directing, isn't it? If the guy can run a sound Foley, he can point a camera.
I'm kind of surprised too, after the fact that it's not produced from Steven Spielberg or from.
Yeah, I mean,
George
this is
Lucas.
back when Disney really like. I don't think people these days. Like, I don't think anyone under the age of, 30 is ever going to fully understand that Disney used to not be a well-run company.
Yeah.
Not be very good at making movies. It made like kids' cartoons and the odd live action, but it was not good at producing stuff. It really couldn't figure itself out. It really couldn't manage its properties at all, and was really kind of floundering for a very long time and broke a bunch. Like Disney's almost gone bankrupt so many times. And then it wasn't till like really the VHS era that they started to figure themselves out a bit. And that's why in the early 90s we started to get the Disney Vault, and we got things like The Lion King and Aladdin and Pocahontas and all those like classic 90s ones. They all came out in like quick succession and were huge successes because they're like, oh, if we make like one movie to this formula every time, like every 2 years, and it is fucking perfect, and then we release it on VHS for a huge amount of money, but only for a very small amount of time, we're going to create like this hype, and we're going to create some value to our product. And suddenly they were off and running, and they've been strength to strength ever since. But before that, like you could buy Disney videos from Target for like $1 because they're like, please buy this stuff for his Bambi. We don't know what to do with it. Please buy it. It's old. Help us. We're old. And now they're like, yeah, we're going to run Netflix out of business in 5 years. That's how good we are. I was like, Jesus Christ. So yeah, for me, I think this is a great idea, but it's not a success. That's my summation of Return to Oz.
We'll give us
a star. You want to go stars?
Oh yeah, let's go stars. We'll run with the.
I mean, I think I give it like 1.5 pumpkin heads. Wow. I give a whole pumpkin head to Fairuza because absolutely she's by far and away the shining light in this film. She carries it. Excellent debut performance from a performer. Excellent child actor performance. Really interesting. Doesn't try to do anything that Judy Garland did, but still makes it feel like the same character. Like some really, really great stuff going on. And a lot of stuff I can only assume she would have had to naturally have or figure out herself when you're working with a first-time director who's in over their head, who keeps getting fired. Like for her to be able to deliver any kind of decent performance as a 10-year-old in making a sequel to a movie that even if she'd never seen, she undoubtedly was aware of. Great. And then, yeah, I'll give a half for effort, half a pumpkin head for effort. But nothing makes sense. It doesn't hold together. It does not hold together as a movie for me. I just can't. I can't get on board with it any further than that.
I think I'd have to give it like 4.5.
4.5. Well,
I think
it's the nostalgia.
Yeah, I think it's the nostalgia. Like you're right. It's weird. It doesn't make sense, but I think that's kind of also what makes it great to me.
There.
Yeah. So 4.5.
Well, in fairness, like you're in a fantastical world. Like it shouldn't all make sense, really. I guess the ambiguity. Well, the reality is the ambiguity is still that it's all in Dorothy's mind. It's her imagination. So, is it supposed to ever really make 100% sense?
Yes, because she's actually there.
I mean, it would be great if they threw in a couple of scenes, like just for a moment, the footage cut, and there was like electric things going on in her head, just for like a flash, like Tyler Durden in Fight Club. It's like, you're like, wait a minute, is she getting it? Like that would really that'd bring this up to like a 4-star for me pretty quickly. I was like, maybe this is just like a child getting electrocuted. This movie is insane. Cable.
I'm really torn with this because I don't hate the movie. I don't rate it super highly, but I don't think it's terrible either. But
I don't even hate it. I'm not rating it lowly because I hate it. I just can't, in good conscience, rate it higher.
But I think it's definitely a movie, and you know, I ain't getting any younger, just quietly. And there's so many films I still feel I want to tick off, and it's like I thought to myself, am I going to honestly watch this ever again? Like maybe once I might revisit it at some point, but I don't think it's like a movie. Like it's probably and it's the same era, like Masters of the Universe. Like that's a movie I watched again not long ago, and when I say not long ago, maybe 3 years ago when it was on Netflix, and I think Chatflix talked about it. And I watched it before that, and I'm like, this is a terrible, terrible movie. And it's like, I will never. And somebody, oh no, I love it. And I know you love Masters of the Universe.
I will say this: Masters of the Universe has almost the same storyline as Star Wars: A New Hope.
Yeah,
and it does it better.
But I'm not gonna. I'm never gonna watch that movie again because I think this is where I think this may actually that's a good parallel. This is where I'm coming from now. I know where I'm coming from. So I just mentioned Master of the Universe. It came out roughly the same time the year after. And it was really panned. Admittedly, the company that made it was done on the cheap.
Oh, was it?
It was very much done on the cheap. There's definitely some really good elements to it, but it was all about doing it on the cheap, but also maybe making some toys out of it, all that. But one of the reasons it bombed was because they didn't have the money to make Eternia and do it, so they had to transplant everything to Earth and have this convoluted storyline. But most kids didn't like it because it didn't truly represent the cartoon that we all grew up with. And I think this is the same thing for Return of the Oz. It does not stack up to the original movie that for 50 years existed, that everybody knows and loves. That I think doesn't matter. This movie could have been a really good movie, but I just think when you kind of compare it to the first one, it's very hard to turn your brain off and look at this unbiasedly, really. So I think that's why I can only give it 2.5. Yeah, Pumpkinheads is probably all 2.5 TikToks.
Ooh. This is the most split we've ever been on a film.
Mm-hmm.
This is wild. We've covered every part of the spectrum in this. And yet, like, we don't even seem to have wildly disparate views on it. We're all kind of in agreement in what we think about the film.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end is like, for all those reasons, I'm not a fan. And for all those reasons, Michelle loves it. For all those reasons, Dave was like, nah, it's kind of middling. Maybe that's the power.
Like I said, Frieza
Power
was fantastic in it. There's definitely some really good elements to it. I think some of the animatronics, like I said before, Belina's fantastic in it, and I couldn't believe how believable she was as a real chicken. And there's definitely some Jack Pumpkinhead stuff that's amazing. I love the design of TikTok. I actually really love, especially the Scarecrow. I know, again, we would have liked some more facial animations, but I think I love the design of him as the king. And, the lion, all the characters, I really like a lot of the designs they did. And a lot of the special effects for 1985 are really, really good with the puppetry and stuff. And obviously Henson Workshops obviously comes in on top of that. But then, unfortunately, like some of the matte paintings, some of the green screen stuff just feels it doesn't feel great. So that's the one thing that was actually the stop motion for Nome King at the end. Isn't quite the greatest anymore, but I still enjoyed it.
Pretty good for 1985. I didn't have any problems with any of like the technical efforts of the characters. I thought that was pretty rock solid. But if you're talking about the things you like about the movie, and your number one review is, I really like the chicken.
She saved the whole thing. She was the hero.
By accident. This movie, I think this is like the biggest like Deus Ex Machina ending of just about any film I can think of. Like, Dorothy does nothing to save the day. None of the characters do anything to save the day. It is pure happenstance.
Is this like the Indiana Jones thing?
It's worse than that, because that problem, like the trajectory of Indiana Jones, the trajectory of Raiders of the Lost Ark is the same whether Indiana Jones is there or not. The trajectory of Return to Oz changes because of the characters, but not because of anything they do. Like, it's just accidental that the chicken is hiding in the pumpkin's head and like shits an egg into his mouth before she gets eaten.
You need to Google some things.
But isn't that kind of the first movie too? It's accidental, the water on the witch.
Yeah, because she's putting out the flames of the broom.
I feel like a lot of that's like, a little bit.
Dorothy is a clumsy fuck, and that's the only reason that she helps anyone. They're like, Dorothy's the best. Like, hang on, is she, or is she just really clumsy? Do we have anything else to say about this movie?
I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
That's the perfect summation. What do you say about Return to Oz? Well, it's a wild film. It's a wild film, and people should check it out if they've never seen it, if only for the experience of watching it. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for listening to this. However you're checking it out, like and subscribe, tell people, follow, check it all out. You can follow the show and all of us on Instagram. All the things will pop up at the end of all the groovy stuff Michelle does, because she edits all of this. Cable and I just end the episode and walk away. But thanks for diving in, and remember, sometimes a chicken shits in someone's mouth, but not all sequels suck.
By definition alone, they're inferior films.